y'all, Dixie here. Today I want to tell you about the gear I took with me on my thru hike of the Florida Trail. And if you want any more information about any individual piece of gear, I've got the entire gear list in the video description of this video. It's a lighter pack link, so you can see the weights, prices, or links to the individual items. First off, I want to cover the big three. I've got several different shelters, but I chose to take the Zpacks Triplex. It's a 3-person shelter, and as I mentioned in my video, favorite tents for 2021, that's my favorite one to take with me when I've got company. It fits 2 people well with both packs, all of the gear can be spread out, and it only weighs 22.5 ounces. So that's a pretty good lightweight shelter for 3 people or 2 people with all of their stuff. The Florida Trail is one of those trails that I definitely would not want to thru hike without a set of trekking poles, just because you're going through so many swampy areas where the ground can be unstable. I went with the women's Leki micro Vario carbon trekking poles. They worked pretty well. I used them for a stretch on the Pinhoti Trail also. I have to say though that I had to tighten up the locks, I think once or twice during my thru hike, because they had loosened up and so the poles started collapsing under pressure. Now, I may end up going back to the black diamond trekking poles that I've previously used because of this, but the Lekis are definitely more comfortable on the grip. They just haven't proven quite as reliable as my black diamonds. The pack that I use to tote all of my stuff is the ULA Ohm 2.0. I became a fan of it when I was testing it out on the Pinhoti Trail, and I decided that I felt like it was going to work for me for the Florida Trail, and so far was my favorite of all the packs that I've used that would also carry a heavy load with all of my camera equipment. And sure enough, it worked well, everything was going great, and then somewhere along the way I noticed it wasn't carrying quite as comfortably as it had previously. And also it started making this annoying squeaking sound, kind of like a saddle on a horse or something. And so it was just driving me crazy, and I was determined to figure out why it was making that noise. And in doing so, I found an adjustment on the pack where kind of the hip belt area connects to the body of the pack. And I just tightened that up, and suddenly the pack carried much more comfortably and didn't make that squeaky noise. But that's an adjustment that isn't on the packs that I've had before, so I didn't even really pay it much attention. But that is something that now I can say is a definite pro about the ULA Ohm 2.0, because in that you can tweak exactly how you carry the pack around your waist, and I really can't explain how it changes, but if you had it on and you adjusted it, you would see that that definitely made the pack carry much more comfortably and stopped that squeaky noise. So it's something that I would definitely say is a pro for the ULA Ohm 2.0. For sleeping at night, I took my 30-degree Enlightened equipment quilt. I know a lot of folks probably think that that's overkill for the Florida Trail, and for a lot of people it probably is, but I am a very cold-natured person, and at night I typically freeze. When I started out, the temperatures in Florida were in the upper 30s, I think actually 38, 39, and then later in the trail there were a couple of cold snaps where it plunged back down to the upper 30s, again 38 or 39. So for me, that quilt was perfect, and if I was warm at night, I could throw a leg out of it or even sleep on top of it if I wanted to, which I never did. But going forward, if I was to do this trail again, that's exactly the same setup I would take with me. Again, might be overkill for some people, but if you tend to be cold-natured, then that might be the range that would work for you. For the other part of my sleep setup, I took my old trusty Thermarest NeoAir Xlite sleeping pad. This pad has just worked well for me. It's lightweight at only 8 ounces, and even though it only stretches from my head to my knees, I just throw my pack under my legs with any other soft-ish gear that I have to help cushion from my knees down, and it's just tried and true and really the sleeping pad that I like. I wondered, because I had used full-length sleeping pads for the entire Pinhoti Trail, if I would miss that full-length setup, but I really didn't. It's just you learn as you go what you're willing to give up in the way of comfort to save on weight, and that's just something that works for me. Now let's go over the kitchen setup. For food and water, I pretty much used all of my typical go-tos, But if you're not familiar with those, I'll touch on them. I used the Zpacks bear bagging kit as my food bag. For my pot, I have the same old Stanco aluminum grease pot that I used when I started my thru hike of the Appalachian Trail and have been using ever since. I had it paired with my homemade pot cozy, and for my utensil, I still have the Toaks long-handled spoon, and I absolutely love that thing because if I'm eating a freeze-dried meal, one of the envelope type meals, then I don't have to shove my hand down in there and get my food all over my hand and also get my grody hand all in my food while I'm trying to eat. I'm still using the same BRS stove that weighs 1 ounce, actually just under an ounce, and I've had that since my thru hike of the CDT in 2018, so been using it for 3 years now. It's still hanging in there. They can be a little testy at times, but for the weight savings, I'm a fan. And the final kitchenware that I carry that I would say is really a luxury item more than anything is my Sea to Summit X Cup. I like having that because when I eat breakfast in the morning, say I'm eating grits, I also want to have my coffee there at the same time. Otherwise, I could save the weight and ditch it, drink my coffee out of the pot, and then eat my grits after, or, you know, vice versa. But I like having them both at the same time. I also like the little measured increments on the cup, so when I'm cooking a meal, I can know exactly how much water I'm putting in there, but there are ways around that too. Again, more of a luxury item, but I like to have it. Just a note on stoves that use fuel canisters. If you're gonna thru hike the Florida Trail, it can be iffy trying to find fuel cans at stores along the way. I'm hoping that as more people thru hike this trail, that will change, but as of now, I was able to make it work. There are so many places along the way where you can stop for real food and snacks at gas stations and whatever that I just didn't use as much fuel out of my fuel can as I normally would on a thru hike. But you can always mail them to yourself. You can do that. As long as they're shipped ground only, you can get in touch with some trail angels along the way. They can probably bring one out to you, and then you will find stores along the way that do have fuel canisters. As always, I carry a Bic lighter or two, just in case one gets misplaced, and a bandana to use as like a hot pad while I'm cooking, and also to wipe everything out when I rinse it out after I eat. For water treatment, I used a Sawyer squeeze paired with smart water bottles or life water bottles, whichever you prefer. Some people like the bags that come with the Sawyer squeeze, but I don't like sitting down, taking the time to squeeze the dirty water through the filter into a clean bottle and then drink it. So I just screw my Sawyer squeeze onto the smart water bottle and it filters while I'm drinking through it. Now, if you're somebody who likes drink mixes to put some Crystal Light or something in your clean water, then you can have a separate smaller bottle for that, like a Gatorade bottle. And then you can squeeze clean water from the smart water bottle through the Sawyer squeeze into your Gatorade bottle and add the drink mix. All right, now let's talk about the clothing I started with. First things first, I took my Montbell Plasma 1000 puffy coat. And I know a lot of you are thinking, are you crazy? Florida is hot. Well, yes, I do think to be a thru hiker, you've got to be just a little bit crazy, but also, once again, I am very cold natured. So I slept in my puffy coat several nights on the Florida Trail, including late April, early May when we had a cold snap. So if you're a cold sleeper, it might be something you want to have. Also, we pack our fears, and one of mine is being hypothermic in my tent at night. And I understand that Florida has a warmer climate than a lot of areas I've backpacked in. You can still be hypothermic even in the summertime. So if my quilt was to be soaked when I got to camp one night, if my clothing bag did not get soaked, I'd at least have my puffy. Also, it doubles as a nice pillow. Now for my hiking outfit, because I had a hiking outfit and a sleeping outfit. For my hiking top, I had a long sleeve Magellan shirt because it helps block out the sun, and because it's a button down, button up, and you can roll the sleeves up, you know, you can kind of regulate how much airflow you're getting with that shirt. It's comparable to the Columbia shirts I've worn on my thru hikes in the past. On the bottom, I had Patagonia barely baggy shorts. I absolutely love those shorts. I've been stuck on them the whole time I've been thru hiking because they're durable, lightweight, and they dry quickly. For my sleeping outfit, I had a long sleeve Columbia shirt, just one of those soft like shirts, because I felt like it would help keep me warm, but also it wasn't just like a thick wool shirt. And then just a pair of leggings that I already had at the house. Towards the end of my hike, when it really started to warm up, I mailed home my long sleeve Columbia button-up hiking shirt and switched it out for a tank top, actually the tank top I'm wearing right now. At first, I didn't want to wear this because I knew that starting out on the levees and a lot of the road walks would be really exposed, so I didn't want to get too much sun too fast, even though I have sunscreen and an umbrella, which I'll talk about in a minute. But towards the end, it was just too hot for me wearing a long sleeve shirt, so I made sure to lather down with sunscreen and tried to use my umbrella as much as possible with the tank top in exposed areas. I really didn't need the leggings and the long sleeve shirt to sleep in towards the end of the hike, except for when we would have those occasional cold snaps. But I held on to them anyway because it was nice to have a different outfit for being in town or when I was doing laundry. And now let's cover undergarments. See what I did there? For the top side, I had an Academy Sports and Outdoors sports bra. I believe the brand is BCG. And for the bottoms, I had 2 pairs of ExOfficio underwear. Now let's move on down to footwear. When I first started, I had 4 pairs of socks, and I do not think that that is excessive for the Florida Trail, especially when you're first starting out in Big Cypress. If you're in a wetter year, your feet will be soaked most of the time, and then there are parts of the trail later on that are swampy for long stretches. So having socks that you can rotate out to make sure after a break you can put on dry socks even if you just end up right back in the swamp. There's just something mental about it, and also it's good for your feet to have something dry on as much as possible. But the 4 socks I had was 2 pairs of Injinjis, because I felt like with my feet being so wet to start out with, it would be good to help prevent blisters. And then a pair of Farm to Feet and a pair of Darn Toughs. After Big Cypress, I sent home 1 pair of Injinjis. I just felt like 3 pairs of socks was pretty good and it would save me a little bit of weight. And then my pair of Injinjis that I kept ended up with a hole, so towards the end of the hike I ended up with only 2 pairs of socks, but that ended up being fine. I could rotate them out enough, and I didn't need to sleep in socks anymore because it was so warm out. And honestly, any night where I wasn't too cold to sleep without socks, especially when we had been walking through swampy areas, I felt like it was good to give my feet a chance to dry out all night long. I typically do not carry camp shoes on a through hike because they're just not worth the weight to me. I'm not tender-footed. I don't mind walking around camp barefoot, but I will say that they are nice to have for in town, just to give your feet, you know, a break from wearing your trail runners, especially if your trail runners are soaked when you get to town. But for the Florida Trail, I did end up carrying a pair of camp shoes, just some cheap lightweight flip-flops that I got from Walmart after I had to get my infected ingrown toenail cut out. So after mile 30 or so, when I had to go have that procedure done, I got some flip-flops just to wear for the day, so I didn't have to cram my cut toe back into my trail runners, and I just didn't toss them. I ended up carrying them the rest of the through hike, but if I had to start over again tomorrow, I would not carry camp shoes. For hiking shoes, I started out with the TopoAthletic Terraventure 2s, and I used them for about 100 miles or so on my through hike of the Pinhoti Trail before starting the Florida Trail. And I didn't switch out the TopoAthletics until probably mile 600 or so. So I think I used them for 600 to 700 miles. I haven't calculated the exact mileage, but somewhere in there, which was impressive to me that they held up that long. And also, typically by mile 500, my feet are screaming with plantar fasciitis pain if I push trail runners past that, just because typically the support is gone at that point. But they held up well, they performed well. I think with the sturdier sole that they have, it was great for road walking because there's no shortage of road walks on the Florida Trail. They don't have the typical zero drop that I normally go for in the Ultra footwear, but it was still a pretty shallow drop, only 3 millimeters. The only complaint that I have with the TopoAthletic is they're ugly. Like, the colors are just not pretty. They don't have a good selection, and I hope that that's something they will work on going forward. But for me, it's all about functionality and how it feels more than how it looks. So when I got a new pair of trail runners, I went with the Ultra Lone Peak 5s. Just wanted to try out the new Ultras, and I've been using Ultra for years. And I got this cool yellow color. They worked well. I will say one thing that's frustrating about the Ultra Lone Peaks is that when Ultra changes up the design, it drastically changes the size of the shoe. I ended up in, I believe, a whole size down from what I typically wear. I normally wear a men's 11, and I ended up having to go down to a men's 10. And I feel like that's extreme, and I don't know why that is. You know, I'm ignorant to shoe design, so maybe somebody out there with more knowledge can explain that better. So I really like both of those pairs of shoes, but if I had to start the Florida Trail over again tomorrow and I could only take one style of shoe the whole way, that would be the TopoAthletic, because they do handle road walking so well. But if there was some way to make like a fairy godmother appear with the Ultras when I was in the woods and the TopoAthletic when I was doing the road walking or hard surface walking, that would be great too. Rain and sun gear. I carried an umbrella for both of those categories because it's great to have instant shade if you're in an exposed area with a lot of sun, which you do encounter on the Florida Trail, and also just to keep the rain out of your face while you're hiking in the rain. And also for me, if I've got a camera I don't want to get wet, but I also want to use while it's raining, then having an umbrella is nice. I started off with just a cheap umbrella from Amazon. It was $5. It was telescoping, so it could break down pretty small and pretty much fit in my pack wherever and wasn't in the way. And while I had it extended and open one day, I sat it on the ground to sit on the edge of it so that I didn't have to sit directly on the ground, and not thinking, leaned back and broke the handle part. So I replaced it with a more sturdy, also more expensive Zpacks umbrella. The Zpacks umbrella definitely had more coverage, and also it has the reflective material on top, so it probably helps keep you cooler under the umbrella. Come to find out, they weighed exactly the same thing, but the Zpacks umbrella was not telescoping, so it was more limiting on where I could keep it in the pack. I just stuck it in the cup holder and it worked fine there. But if you tend to have a lot of stuff in there and don't want to shove something else in your cup holder, then the $5 Amazon one might work better. And obviously it wasn't as sturdy, but it did the job for like $45 less. I can't see myself ever doing a thru hike without an umbrella, but 100% I would not thru hike the Florida Trail without having an umbrella. I also carried rain gear. For my rain jacket, I had the Enlightened Equipment Women's Visp. It worked well, it's lightweight, it feels breathable, and I think it just looks more fashionable than some of the other options out there. For rain pants, I had the anti-gravity gear rain pants. Because Florida is so warm, I didn't want to hike with rain pants during the day, so I did end up sending those home. Now let's talk about electronics. I used the Nightcore NU25 headlamp. It's adjustable in the way that it clicks down this way and also around your head. It's got a red beam, it's got 3 white beam settings, it also has a blinking red light. It just had everything that I felt like I needed for a thru hike. Also, I do a lot of night hiking, so I like this headlamp because it's rechargeable. I carried my InReach Mini with me. I like having a device where I can call for help if I need to. But thankfully, I didn't have to use it much for communication on the trail because I had service, I would say 90% at least of the Florida Trail. Because I have so much camera equipment on trail, I use a lot of power. So I carried an Anker 30,000 milliamp hour backup battery to charge everything while I was hiking. That lasts me about 4 to 5 days, but it's probably overkill for most people. And of course, I have various charging cords, bricks to plug into the wall for when I'm in town, and earbuds. If you want to see all of the camera equipment I carried with me, then you can check that out in the lighter packs link that I mentioned in the video description of this video. And some of the miscellaneous items that I carried with me are my MT Knives Genesis neck knife, a journal with a pen, a mask, my Dyneema wallet, a small thing of bug spray because I really don't like using it unless I have to, and some sunscreen because it's Florida, there's a lot of sun, it's exposed, and I'm not really a fan of skin cancer. Of course, I had various toiletries like tweezers, nail clippers, a mirror and brush combo, a disposable razor from when I'm in town, toilet paper, baby wipes, hand sanitizer, and also a toothbrush and toothpaste. And last but not least, baby powder, because it works for chafing and also putting in your hair so it's not just a grease mop by the time you get to town. I have a very small repair kit that includes duct tape, a needle, floss, and a sleeping pad repair kit. My first aid kit is also pretty small. I typically start off with just a packet or two of the one-time use antibiotic ointments, vitamin I, ibuprofen, Pepto-Bismol tablets, Imodium. It's just not fun having diarrhea in the woods. Benadryl, just in case there's an allergic reaction, and then I take allergy meds daily when I'm out on trail because my allergies just go crazy out there. All right, well, I think that wraps it up for all of the gear I took with me on the Florida Trail. If you've got any questions about the items that I mentioned, please feel free to leave those in the comments below. Thank y'all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the Florida Trail videos. We'll see y'all next time. Ooh. I always have trouble finding something that's like not up my booty crack, you know, like I'm maybe I shouldn't say that. Okay, it's a little bit cooler during the day, then I could wear that. No, I just don't need to talk, I just need to shut up.